Welcome back, folks. We are here live on the Eastern Seaboard in the Eastern Time Zone. It is 11 a.m. over across the country. We know our folks in the western part of the country just starting to wake up and start their days. So thank you for joining us. If you've missed anything thus far, we have tons of content on the Delt Facebook page. Make sure to check that out. But we're currently at $40,000 raised from 90 total donations, and certainly a lot of time and a lot more to come from today. So thank you all so much for joining us. We've had some great interviews, some great content thus far, and we're going to keep that train rolling here into this 11 o'clock hour as we are joined by Tiffani Ziemann, our Director of Risk Response and Education. Tiffani, thank you so much for joining us this morning. How are things? And I know you're traveling. Tell us, where are you?
Yeah, thanks for having me today, Vince. I'm super excited to be here. I'm currently in Texas. I just wrapped up a really great visit with Sam Houston State University, doing some educational workshop and spent a little bit of time with their chapter, and it was a lot of fun.
Fantastic. Appreciate all that you do for the fraternity. And certainly, if you want to expand just a little bit on your role in the fraternity to those who may not be aware of the work that you do day in and day out for Delta Tau Delta.
Sure. So as you said, I'm Director of Risk Response and Education. So my primary role is working with chapters who may have had conduct issues, either with Delt policy, with university policy, kind of being an advocate and support for them through those processes and helping ensure that they have a really positive Delt experience that is safe and healthy and is really giving our men the experience that they want to have. And with that, I'll do a lot of workshops with groups. I'll do a lot of education pieces, a lot of partnerships with our campus partners, just to make sure our men are feeling supported and having a good time.
Fantastic. Certainly important work, and we're appreciative that you do that work. I know it cannot always be the most glamorous, but there's certainly some great moments, and I know you had a great reception with the guys at Sam Houston, which is awesome. Now, the fraternity recently pivoted from the member responsibility guidelines to the code of conduct. And I'm curious, what inspired that update, that change, and what all is included in the changes from that one document now to the code of conduct?
Mm-hmm. It's a great question. It really is content-wise extremely similar to the original MRG. Some of it was a change in language. As a fraternity, national fraternity, we look at chapter conduct, chapter behavior, and we really try to give our chapters the tools to hold their members accountable and create those internal accountability structures for their members. And so some of it was just a naming process that we're looking at code of conduct for chapters and then creating some expectations that they can utilize with their members, and really talking through some of those overall chapter issues, because the arch chapter, and staff is really going to focus on chapter operations, chapter functions. And so that was kind of the naming difference. And then it really just reorganized it in a way that made a little bit more sense. The MRG has been kind of developed and edited over time, and we've added to it. And as we've had to add some policies, take some policies away. And this just gave us a chance to restructure it. So it was a little bit more familiar probably to our students, is it's a little bit more reflective of what their code of conducts may look like on campus. And so hopefully it's a less unfamiliar document to them, that they're used to kind of seeing it already in that way and structure. But at the end of the day, really a lot of the policies are primarily the same. And it also explains our approach to conduct, which is really a partnership focus, wanting to make sure that we're engaged with our chapters and with our campus hosts to move through any conduct process or follow up through accountability that may occur.
Fantastic. Appreciate you expanding on that. One thing that I know a lot of folks are curious about is we're now 3 years from the onset or the arrival of the coronavirus and the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm very curious, how has over those 3 years the change in our students' behavior and psychology on campus presented itself, especially through the lens of the work you do for the fraternity?
Yeah, it's been really interesting in this past year in particular, because I think we're seeing really our first full year of kind of quote unquote normal operations. And I think we're starting to see some of that kind of tension from what officer transition looked like, that we had officers who were operating within significant limitations from what kind of their campus environments, how they could get together, what social events look like, maybe not even really having social events or kind of larger scale activities. And then they're handing off the baton to these newer officers who've kind of never really saw kind of the before times. Really, our seniors were the last folks who had a much more traditional campus experience. And so we've seen a lot of our chapter officers just not even knowing what they don't know. So they don't know what questions to ask in terms of how do I plan this major event, or who do I communicate with? What does a social event look like? And so I think we're seeing a lot more issues with some of those kind of just social event policy things, making sure they're going through all of their safety checklists, both with us and with their campus hosts, seeing some of those pieces, and then also pivoting back to the new member program, having that in person more frequently, and how to structure that time so it is useful, so it's actually like not taking up so much of the new members' time. I think it was a pretty big switch from you're entirely on Zoom and maybe you're in a classroom together, socially distanced, to the restrictions are off. So how are you gonna build brotherhood? How are you gonna spend time together? And really working with chapters on figuring out how to make that transition back.
Certainly makes a lot of sense. And we talk about how we can address some of those things and how we get folks in front of these chapters to continue to institutionalize some of the best practices of the fraternity. And so we know that this fall, Doug Russell shared earlier, we're going to have 10 consultants on the road this fall. Certainly, I know you collaborate with those men out on the road. What does that collaboration look like? How do you leverage the relationships with the consultants and vice versa to be able to best do your job and help empower them to do theirs?
I'm really excited for the consultants to be back on the road and out in our chapters more. It definitely makes it a little bit easier on everyone to have kind of more touch points with our members. And especially as we're continuing to transition back into kind of this normal operations full experience, for them to be on the ground, to be able to ask questions and in real time work with our chapters to say, like, this is maybe not how we want to approach it, but here's some new ideas, or this is what worked in the past. How do we build upon that? I think it's going to be really great to have just more access to our members in that way and give them more opportunities to ask questions. I think one of the things that we hear a lot is kind of the national fraternity is nameless, faceless, like the central office. And when we get into chapters and we're actually able to spend time with folks, they understand that we're here to support them and we have resources available and are willing to be able to spend the time to help them make whatever change they want to make or do whatever program that they want to do. And so I think this will really just increase our chapter's ability to operate at a higher level, to feel comfortable with coming to the office with questions. It's also easier to start seeing if things are concerning or if our officers don't know, no particular information, get that to them sooner. So then we don't come with an issue later on because we just didn't catch it or didn't know, or our chapters didn't know. And then it snowballed into this bigger issue. So hopefully it's really helpful in prevention and can really help our chapters who are feeling like they don't have enough information to get that information, and our chapters who are doing well to really start thriving.
And we know here internally, at least, you've worked hands-on over the previous years with the President's Excellence Institute and have personally been able to develop relationships with the chapter presidents through that experience in Texas. Tell us just some of the successes that have come from that program and how that's sort of been proof positive to what you just talked about, and getting those relationships built early to prevent a lack of communication and being able to intervene earlier with potential issues.
Yeah, I really love any opportunity that I have to program with chapters, to be in front of officers when it's a less stressful situation. Sometimes when I'm involved, it's because a chapter's in an investigation or has had some sort of issue and things are kind of heightened. And so it's really nice to be able to work with them in kind of more preventative relationship building piece. So PresX was great. Having the chance to just be with presidents, to get to know them, have them understand really what my role is and the ways in which we can provide resources and support. That's how some of this has evolved, getting invited to chapters just to do programming and just to do events. And, I'm later this month, I get to go up to the University of Idaho and do a chapter retreat with them. I had the opportunity to spend a lot of time with our Ohio State chapter, helping them kind of continue to build their chapter culture and grow their organization. And so it's been really amazing having those relationships and knowing that presidents, once they meet us, they pick up the phone, like send a text message and say, hey, I'm having this issue. Can you help us out or talk me through this? And it's really made a difference in, I think, the members' experience and my experience, and hopefully is, again, that prevention piece that we're getting ahead of things that are issues, or at least helping presidents feel or officers feel like they have people out there who have their backs and are supporting them.
Fantastic. Well, Tiffani, we certainly appreciate, again, all the work that you do for Delta Tau Delta and the resources that you're able to funnel to these undergraduate men across the country. Certainly for those that are watching today, if you want to support this effort and support the work being done, strongly encourage you to go to deltsgive.org and look at the member programming and support bucket of the Forging the Future campaign, which goes toward things like the President's Excellence Institute and other opportunities to engage on a staff level with these individuals and build those relationships to be able to intervene and continue to support chapters with best practices, resources, and other things they may need to have a great Delt experience. Tiffani, thank you once again so much for joining us here on the Delt Day of Giving.
Thanks for having me, Vince. I appreciate it.
That'll do it for this hour. We'll be back next hour with more content. I'll have a live update on how things are progressing. We're just past $40,000 now on the Delt Day of Giving. And at noon, we'll have a link for a live Zoom room where you can log in and ask questions of our executive leadership of the fraternity, including Steve Vedra and Jack Creeman. So think of your pressing questions for the organization. Stop in, have some FaceTime with our leadership. But until then, I'm Vince Russo signing off here on the Delt Day of Giving 2023, Forging the Future.